I was actually, that second last song, The Blessing, I was glad that you guys did that song. I was actually going to ask for it, but, it just kind of works out there. I'll say this, and I was just thinking about the power that we have in our life and the way that we set up our lives for the people around us. And when I say that, I can appeal to the parents in the room, and you understand that you set a culture in your household for what you value. And so what you value and the culture that you establish in your household is often what your kids will start to walk in. And so if you're valuing God and valuing moments with God and all the rest of it, and we're not just treating Sunday as a religious idea, your kids are more than likely going to walk in that. But I think it's further than that for us who don't all have kids, and I've only got 2 years under my belt, so I'm not at all pretending to be a parent with years of wisdom. But I think you carry that in the workplaces and in your conversations and in the way that you conduct yourself. You actually come with a power and a presence in something. And what I want to say is, don't underestimate the power of your presence. Is that all right? Like, don't underestimate the power of your presence in that conversation. It sounds like a really basic concept, but I'm going to get there today. And I just kind of sit there and go, I don't want to be someone there that's just going through the motions. I actually want there to be intention and deliberateness. I don't even know if that's a word. In what we're doing. And so when I'm conversing with people, if I'm hanging out with people, if I'm spending time at the coffee shop, I actually have some presence of God that, and I can carry that power that He gives me. I want to change people around me just through interaction. Not me. I want the Holy Spirit to be flowing, and I want that to be evident. I'm going to go down, we've been talking about Abraham, and I don't know if anyone else has picked up the practical nature of these lessons or these last 3 weeks. Adrian actually spoke exactly what I just said to about establishing a legacy or a culture in your own family, about establishing a faith-based culture, and we leave a legacy for our kids. So the question is what sort of legacy are we leaving for our family? What sort of legacy are you establishing for the people behind you? Whether it's, again, when not all of us are married, not all of us have kids, but, it's such a great lesson to, and it was on Father's Day, and so it was actually a call to the fathers, consider the sorts of environment and the culture that you're creating at home. Week 2 there, as Adrian again, and it talked about Abraham, and he would step out in faith, and what his faith looked like is God said to him, go. He didn't know what he was stepping out to. But the call for us as Christians is, what does our faith look like or what is our next step in our faith journey? There might be something there that immediately just comes to you, and right there in that moment, you're sitting there going, actually, I do need to address that. I don't actually have a blueprint for that. I don't have a working order, 1, 2, 3 to Z type thing. I don't know if 3 you can get to Z, but you get what I'm saying. But God's asking you to step out in faith. What's your next faith step? Week 2 of Abraham. Week 3 was Rono. And we talked about that idea, and it is a difficult story, and anyone else is comfortable with that story, we'll talk to you later, where you're called by God to sacrifice your son Isaac. Yeah, God told me. And I don't know if any other parent in there around here, God definitely told me to sacrifice one of my kids this week. There was a moment. Sacrifice was on the cards. Come here, Samuel. We're going to have a word. I knew you guys would react like that. See, I know it wasn't. It was me. It wasn't you. And we can kind of make light of that situation. I'll have a little bit of a laugh. But the things that we talked about at Cell this week with the generations of men is, what do you actually have in your life that's off limits? Is there something that you keep away from God that's off limits? Tough ask. What is something in your life that you might actually need to sacrifice and need to bring to the altar? And that's tough. And as we went around, a spirit of honesty was in our group. And I love that we can be vulnerable in those moments under the presence of God, and we can actually share with the intention there that we want to work on our lives under a banner of faith. And so this week we come to this story in Genesis 13, and I've for those who got their Bibles, we'll turn to, I was going to say, turn to page 15. That's not going to work, is it? But I get to talk about the story of when Abraham and Lot, they come together. I'm going to read it. It's a little bit of scripture. And I'm going to... I'm really actually excited about this message. And you'll see why in a minute. How are you, Rubes? Grand final yesterday. Came back as winners. A little bit tired. A little bit. Man, winning a grand final, that's nothing just to be a little bit. Well done, man. Woo! I went down and watched the boys play. Actually, they've got a girl on their team. Sorry, I don't... Of course they had a girl. No, they had a girl on the team. And that was one surprise. Ruben in goals was also my second surprise. But he got onto the field there and made an impact on the second half. So well done, guys. Sorry, that was my digression. 13:1, page 15. So Abraham went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything that he had, and Lot went with him. Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and gold. From the Negev, he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great, and they were not able to stay together. And quarrelling arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. The Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarrelling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. But if you go to the right, I'll go to the left." Lot looked up and saw that the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt towards Zoar. This was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The two men parted company. Abraham lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities and plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. And we read about that later on. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, "Lift up your eyes from where you are and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring. And your offspring will be like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you." So Abram moved his tents and went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord. Pretty simple story, hey. When I traditionally read this story, and I don't know about anyone else, what we take away from this story is that Lot and Abram at this point in time, they're cruising around together, they've parked their company, and then Abraham sees a situation, there's a bit of quarrelling, and he says, "You know what? If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. You go to the right, I'll go to the left." And there's this idea that God is going to be blessing Abraham with whatever he does. And I don't know if anyone else picks up that idea where he's like, "You know what? I'm not worried about which way you go. I just want to be wherever God is. And so I'm just going to pass it over to you to make that decision for us, because God's going to bless me anyway." And that's kind of where I get to that story. And I'm pretty comfortable with that idea that God does want to bless you, that the circumstances, we look to the left and we sit there and go, "Well, it's well watered over there, God. Over here's looking a little bit like a desert. You know what? We're going to pass it up to God." The other guy chooses the well-watered area. We know in a few chapters later that the well-watered area, fire and brimstone, boom, circumstances change. And so we don't want to make our decisions based on circumstance. We still want to be wise. 100%, I actually probably would have chosen the well-watered area, maybe. But my point is that God is asking us not to look at the circumstances, but He's looking to trust us. And that's a simple concept. And I want to leave that one there, because as I read this 50th time, whatever, the catalyst to this moment isn't blessing. The catalyst to this moment actually comes out of quarrelling. It starts with a quarrel. Starts with someone there that's actually not happy with their situation. The catalyst for this moment is actually some level of tension in a relationship. But the motivation is not prosperity. And so this is where I feel like I've got this particular story wrong in the past. The motivation for Abram wasn't prosperity. Abram said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you or me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers." His motivation was peace. And I kind of want to reverse engineer this idea, because I feel as if people of faith and you and I, when we have a situation and when we have some quarreling or we have a disagreement, could we not be like Abraham, that looks not to be prosperous in that situation, but rather look for peace? Tough call, hey. All the wives are agreeing with me. Have you met my husband? All the other fellas are sitting there going, "Have you met my wife?" Wouldn't it be great if we had a different motivation when it came to quarrels or tension? I feel like Abraham gives us a little bit of an insight of how we actually want to be people and be Christians in this world, in our interpersonal relationships, because it shouldn't be about self. It should be about finding peace. So I want to extract out of this particular story a couple of points that I feel is a healthy way maybe to argue, or a healthier way to look at a situation, or a healthier way to be Christians and to be people that love God, because we should be trying to bring peace on earth. And I was just thinking of a situation this week there that I observed, and it was a court thing, and I went to court. And I don't know if the motivation was peace. And I get that that's a very extreme case when you've got two people battling things out. But my prayer for us as people that know God, and Paul talks about this, particularly with believers, is that wouldn't it be better to be wronged by one another than go before the courts? I get that that's an extreme case, but even in your own situation, isn't peace better than breaking relationship? Can't we be people that bring a different spirit to an argument? The way I argue now with Jess, and I want to caveat this with, Jess is way smarter than I am. She's a better arguer than I am. She is more intelligent than I am. Thank you, Heidi. Didn't need that at all. But you know what? Exactly what I've just said is how I start our arguments. I want to humble myself before my wife because I don't want it to become so emotional. I actually want to lean on her intelligence. I want to lean on her experience. I want to lean on her perspective. And that's not to say that we are perfect, but it's definitely way better than rocking up with all the ideas, with all the directives and all the way there that I know what's best for you, let alone me. And so I have tried and continue to try to just lean on the other person, to allow those things to come out as opposed to suppress that person down. That is not a healthy way. All right. You guys ready? Yep. Beautiful. I'm actually thinking this is going to come, sorry, in joke. We're going to go to verse 5, 6 and 7. Now Lot, who had been moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, but the land could not support them while they stayed together. Isn't it interesting there that the land couldn't support them, as if your stuff has gotten away? My stuff, your attitudes, my attitudes. Too much stuff has gotten away for you guys to co-relate. I feel like I'm talking to married people, but I'm really not. I actually think this is related to all our interpersonal relationships. Some of the relationships I have, I am really a peacemaker. We're going to get there. So I think when we talk about Abraham, we're going to become peacemakers. The land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great and they were not able to stay together. Verse 7, and quarrelling arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. Becoming a peacemaker means that we address points of tension. Now, a point of tension is something that you guys are about to quarrel about, whether it's a friend, whether it's your parents, whether it's one another. I was actually talking to one of the young adult couples this last few weeks, and they said, we had a fight, and they were quite emotional about it. And I said, good. And it wasn't trying to be rude, but it's this idea that we actually need to address those points of tension instead of letting it fester. We need to address those points of tension to avoid the quarrelling or to deal with the quarrelling. Same with your friendships. You know what? And you guys have all been part of I was talking to another lady the other week, and there's tension with her and her mum. We've got to address... The longer we ignore things, the greater those things are fester. Being a peacemaker is not a peacekeeper. I want to try and break those two things down. Because a peacemaker is someone that is deliberate about trying to make peace in a relationship. Keeping the peace is really dangerous if we refuse to address something. If we refuse to ignore those things and rather we let it fester and it builds on us and it really starts to become a point of tension, and each time you guys go to an argument or each time there's a thing, you walk into the room and you feel it and you're like, oh man, I just want to tell him about that thing. Oh, and all again, we bring back the past and we haven't dealt with it. We haven't addressed it. Our faith is not actually present in that room, and if we're going to be like Abraham, we need to be people there that are peacemakers. Matthew 5:9, it talks about, and I'll just flick it to, it's in the Beatitudes, and we sit there and go, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God, children of God. What we want to do as being a man or a lady of faith is we want to be children of God. We actually want to be the people that represent God on earth. Is there tension in your marriage? Not looking at anyone in potentially. Don't worry about my eyes. Sorry. And it's not trying to be rude about it, but God actually wants us to have peace in our relationships. Are we active or are we passive? What about our parents? Is there a disconnect between you and your mum or you and your dad, or is there disconnect between you and your kids, you and your friends? Can we address that? And that's hard, and I'm going to come back to this verse again, but it does talk about, where's Romans 12? It says in Romans 12:18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If it is possible. And the caveat is, there are going to be some obnoxious people in this world that despite all your efforts, despite all your energies, they don't want to have that peace. But you've been the person that's tried to bring the peace. It's not because you were avoiding it, it's because they were avoiding it. And so it's almost a caveat where we shouldn't put up with abuse. We don't need to put up with people who are obnoxious and Just my father actually just had my grandma died. I actually talked to you about this last time, but they had to go through the will, and let me tell you, they hate one another. There's 7 brothers and sisters, and they wanted to sue the nines out of one another, and grandma's stuff's getting up divided. Now, if they'd all been nice and peaceable with one another, they probably would have got a healthy chunk. But once the lawyers got involved, oh man, I think 7 months later, and I think there's still 160 grand wasted. And it's not about the money stuff, I get it, whatever. But they really don't like each other. And it just costs more hurt because they're not willing to look for peace. They're looking to quarrel, and they're looking to point the finger, they're looking to find fault. Oh. Number 2. Jess's family, on the other hand, lovely. Oh man, they're really nice. You know what? Number 2, I've kind of covered this. The motivation. When we do have those particular quarrels and those disagreements and those frustrations at home, or there is tension, what's your motivation? Because if the motivation isn't peace, then it's really about you and what you want out of that situation. It's about your agenda. Do you want to win it? Do you want to win the fight? Do you want to win the battle? Because if it's about winning, then it means the other person loses. No one feels good about losing. Are you trying to belittle? And so I think about these, and they're tough questions, but peacemakers, they give options. Not ultimatums, not directives. We want to be able to find peace with one another so we can move forward. And so the first one, address that tension. It's not like I'm sitting there going, you know what, go out there and make arguments with people. That's not what we're saying. Because if the idea is to have an argument without actually trying to achieve peace, then you know what, leave that dead and buried until you're better in a better place. But our idea is actually we're supposed to be Christians that bring peace on earth through the Spirit that we have. And it says in the way that we live by faith, and our faith is actually aligned to our actions. It says in James. And then when we sit there and go, actually, does our faith line up, or do our actions line up with our faith in the way that we argue, in the way that we bring peace? I used to argue really badly. And it used to be about getting my point across with Jess. And she is so lovely and so, like I said, she's smarter than I am. And she would hear me out. And so I was so thankful that she was a peacemaker in our relationship really early on. And it's something there that saved our relationship because she was the peacemaker. And I've learned from her how to have those tough conversations when you're putting stuff on the line, though. And so, it is a vulnerable moment. And it does take someone to step out and to address that tension. But they're addressing that tension with the motivation of peace. Isn't that a better way to parent? Any kids in the room or any young adults in the room, if your parents are asking you, you know what, I want to have a conversation with you because I want to achieve peace in this disagreement that you and I have. I don't necessarily agree with all your lifestyle changes, but I want to bring peace into your life. I want to have peace about this situation. And so I don't want to feel like I'm coming down on you. Rather, I want to have an open forum in which we can discuss this because I want to bring peace to both of us. So we created a forum straight away where we're both working towards peace. Not in a sense of Father love disciplines and we're going to whoof, that's biblical as well, but to probably take that out of context. I love it, motivation of peace. Number 3, humble ourselves. Oh yeah, I get to read this bit. Here's an interesting thought. So Abram said to Lot, verse 8, let's not have any quarreling between you and I. Let's not have any disagreements. Let's not have your sassy behavior. Let's not have that frustration that each time you walk into the room. Let's not be eggshells, walking on eggshells around one another. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Walk into the room and you feel that, Let's not have that. Between your herdsman, between you and me, or between your herdsman and mine, for we are brothers. Now, for we are brothers, that's really the kicker here, because Abram's actually Lot's uncle. And in a patriarchal society, you would be expected that Lot should honour his elder, and he should actually be looking out for the interest of Abram, because that is the patriarchal system in which we honour our father and mother. But here, Abraham levels with him, humbles himself. He comes down a moment. And I wonder in our situations if we've actually got to take our mantle off, humble ourselves into a difficult position or a lower position to find a lower common ground so then we can build up from there. That's tough and annoying. True, but it actually establishes a level playing field in which Abram can now present not a directive, not instruction, but options. Because peacemakers, they come with options. Peacemakers come up with solutions. You go to the left, you know what? I'll go to the right. You go to the right, I'm going to go to the left. But I don't want us to quarrel. My motivation here is peace. I want to be a man that is peace in his family, a peace out in the world, a peace for his friends. Romans 12:18, I think I read 17 before, and it's so it did. I did say, sorry. If it is not possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But number 19, do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written. 17, sorry. I'm a little bit lost. 17, 18, did I call the wrong verse? Maybe. Actually, sorry, I've given the bumps to you. James. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving. And so when we are giving instruction, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruit, impartial and sincere. Now that idea is it's not selfishly motivated, is it? There's actually a level of sincerity to it and care for the other person that you want them to come out of this situation where they feel that peace and they feel that ease, and you're creating an environment where, you know what, we're on the same page, we're on the same team, because I want you to win out of this situation as well. Verse 18, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. That was number 18. Abram was a man, as we know, was described as God's friend. And we know there in Hebrews that his faith was credited to him in righteousness as well. But I wonder with Abram, is the way that he lived his life is just he was a peacemaker all the time. You know, the three angels of death, call them whatever you want, come over through Abram's camp, and they say, we're going down to Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to go wipe it out because the sin has reached a level that we can no longer let it go. And Abram, again, peacemaker. What if you find 50 people there that are righteous? Would you still destroy it? Ron referenced this story last week. What if you found 45? What if you found 40? What if you found 35? What if you found 30? What if you found 20? He's looking for ways to make peace. What if you found 10? We know that the only people that left that town was Lot, his 2 daughters, and his wife, who then looked back. The way that Abram works with Sarah, and there's quarrelling and there's frustration around Hagar and Ishmael and their other child, and the way that he deals with that situation is looking for a peaceable outcome. Sarah, what would you like us to do in this situation? God says, listen to Sarah, and Hagar and Ishmael are left and allowed to move on. And so I just think about the way that Abram and Abraham, same guy, looking for ways to make peace in their interpersonal relationships, in the relationships that matter, with our kids, with our parents, with our family, with our friends. Number 4, or just really briefly, is I love this bit at the end actually. Lot chooses for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and sets out towards the east, and the two men part company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against God. But verse 14, then the Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, lift up your eyes from where you are and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. The Lord said to Abram after Lot has departed. That after idea, and I submit this to you guys, and I submit this to the church, is when we do business and when we address tension, when we bring peace, when we deal with a situation and peace comes into that situation, we actually are making room for God. We're actually allowing our lives to be less cluttered with the cares and the worries of this world, to be able to hear what God has got for us. And so we take the tension away. We take that frustration away. And you know what I'm talking about, that thing that's always in the back of your mind, the thing that's always in your spirit, the thing that you haven't been able to address, the thing there that is just frustrating each time you talk to that person, the thing there that you wake up next to, the thing that I need to address after it's been addressed, after the quarrelling has been addressed, after the tension has been talked about, after the solution has been found. There's room for God. After Lot had parted from him, God says, lift up your eyes. God's just looking for some room in your life to talk to you. God's looking for some real estate there that you can give him, so he can speak into your spirit and actually show and reveal the promises that he has for your life. The real issue is that quarrelling just stifles and distracts us from God's promises and the word over your life. We want to be people there that address those things. We want to be people there that bring peace into the situation. We want to be able to hand over things to God and deal with tensions and whatever that is. We want to be free. We want to bring peace. And I think out of that, that's where God says that's where the blessing is. That's where peace is. You just read it before. And God talks to us. I'm just going to leave it right there, but I mentioned there that Jess was such a great peacemaker in our relationship early on. And I submit that to you because in the first few years of our marriage, she was the peacemaker and I was the guy that's kind of bringing tension. And I remember I came home from doing some work and we'd come to church and I'd gone back from church and I got to the afternoon there and Ron and Heather are sitting in my lounge room. Heather might remember this there. And they're like, oh, how are you, Cole? And I said, hey guys, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we should chat. And I'm like, yeah, we can chat. What's going on? They're like, no, we need to chat. I'm like, yeah, we can chat. No, we need to chat. And I laugh about this situation, and Jess and I laugh about this situation, but I was the husband there that I never had honoured Jess and actually had prioritised her. I was too busy trying to be a nice guy to everyone else and trying to put other people first and all the rest of it. And as a result of it, my marriage paid, my relationship paid, and paid for it. And I was just bankrupting myself, bankrupting my marriage, bankrupting Jess. And I actually asked her if it was all right just to share that, because I needed someone that would address the tension with me. And I did, and Jess had the guts and had the ability to bring Heather and Ron into that situation. And then we went and got marriage counselling, and, still married 16, 17 years later. But it was about this tough situation where Jess risked it to take on the tension, to address it, because she was uncomfortable with the destruction that I was causing. I'm from a broken family because my parents couldn't deal and couldn't address those things. They couldn't create an environment where they would risk it to address the tension. And as parents and as people, if we don't address the tension to bring in the peace, then I can guarantee you that there is going to be some brokenness along the way. And I think that as a church and as a people and as people that love God, we want to be peacemakers in our situations, in our families, in our friendships. And so we want to bring peace into that situation. We want to be like Abraham. I say that all to say, be vulnerable with one another, share our hurts and our worries, address the tension, bring the peace, have the motivation as peace, be humble, make room for God. Amen. We're going to pray.